Hi, welcome back to topic 3. This time you're at file 4. 3 and 4 are related, they're continuations of the same analysis on Pfizer and the Standard & Poor Index representing the stock market. In file 3, we did the return and standard deviation for both Pfizer and the index. We did the coefficient of variation to see which had more risk per unit of return. Now we're looking at the covariance, correlation, and beta of Pfizer. So what we're thinking about here is covariance means the covariance, which is the variance in common between Pfizer's return changes and the return changes of the index representing systematic risk movements. So this covariance is measuring the quantity of systematic risk in the variance of Pfizer. Correlation will tell us the amount of return that is coming from the index, so we could think of this as how much of Pfizer's return is related to systematic risk, and then the balance would have to be business or industry risk, and we'll calculate beta. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the two spreadsheets that were created by the downloads. There's a spreadsheet for Pfizer and a spreadsheet for the index GSCP. We're going to go into Pfizer and we're going to add a new spreadsheet. So once we're in Pfizer, we're going to click over to the right-hand side where we see Insert. You'll see the arrow pointing to it. And then the banner drops and you'll click on Insert Sheet and OK. And now there'll be a second spreadsheet within Pfizer's file. What we want to do is now move data from the GSCP, GSPC file. So we click over there, and now we're going to begin the movement. So you're going to click on the top left corner of the spreadsheet for GSPC. It will highlight, click on Copy, and then move your cursor over to the Pfizer file. Click on the top left corner of the newly created spreadsheet. Click Paste, and the spreadsheet will be copied. Now you have in a single file both sets of data. What we would like to do now is repeat the process for a third spreadsheet. So we'll have Pfizer, we'll have GSCP, and then an analysis spreadsheet, all in that same file. So repeating our process before, again, we're going to go into Insert on the right-hand side. When the banner drops to Insert Sheet, click on Enter, and a new sheet, a third sheet, will be in the file of Pfizer. And this will be our analytical file. Now, if you look at my spreadsheet view below, you'll see directly under the return data, I calculated the variance for Pfizer. I did the exact same thing for GSPC, and what I want to do is copy over the Pfizer, the average, and the deviation data for both Pfizer and for GSPC to the third new spreadsheet. And this is what you'll see. Essentially, I've clicked on cells B, C, D, rows 10 through 16, copied, went over to the new spreadsheet to column A1, pasted, but before I press paste, I want to paste values, so I'm going to look at the banner until I see 1, 2, 3, click on the 1, 2, 3, that will put decimal looking numbers on my spreadsheet. So if I click on the percent sign and the +00, I can add two decimal places after the decimal for the percent. So now I'll have my values as percent like you'd see below. I do the exact same thing with columns E, F, and G for the GSP data. Above the holding period returns, I'm putting in the label Pfizer for Pfizer's data and GSCP. Now I'm interested in multiplying the deviations of Pfizer with the deviations of GSPC to be able to get the variance. So on this slide, you'll see that I've multiplied the two deviations. The extreme right-hand column is the sheet, the column with all the data for the product, the multiplication of the two deviations. I add them up. I get the sum of 0.54%. I'm dividing by n minus 1, which is 6. So the covariance is 0.09%. Now I have the covariance. We're going to use that later, both now in the correlation, and we'll also be using it in the last folder where we're talking about a stock portfolio. So correlation is going to be the covariance divided by total variance of the two stocks. The covariance, we just calculated, it's 0.09%. The standard deviation, as we calculated in the previous file, was 4.46% for Pfizer and 2.84% for GSPC. So the correlation of Pfizer with the index is 0.09 divided the product of the standard deviations, which turns out to be 71.4%. So 71.4% of Pfizer's return is for systematic risk, and that's important for us to know. So how do we again interpret correlation between two stocks? It's the amount of time the stock returns are moving in common. When it's the correlation in the index, it's representing the percent of the return that is coming from systematic risk. To come up with beta, what we're going to do is divide the covariance by the variance of the index. The variance of the index came from the previous slide, but if I go back one, all I have to do is go back and I have the standard deviation for the index. I'd have to just square it to get the variance. So the variance of the index is 0.08%. So the correlation is 0.09% divided by 0.08%, which is 1.12. So the beta for Pfizer is slightly more risky than average. It's about 12% more risky than the average stock, and therefore we'll get about 12% more premium for systematic risk than average for the stock. And we'll talk about this more in file 6.